Toto. I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. We must be over the rainbow.
Well, it's good to be back, finally home again, at least for a little while. It's been hard getting back into the swing of things. I know we did What the Frock on Sunday, we did Sub-Vets this week, and I did Bill Mick, but still, man, it has been really, really hard to just get back in the swing of things. Yesterday, Cammie and I went to Ocean Shores, or day before yesterday, I guess. She's going to be working on our anniversary next week, so we decided to go early. So that's what happened there. Even it seems like stuff just keeps coming up, and it gets me off kilter a little bit, I guess, getting back to it. For those of you that have asked, and many of you have, and I appreciate your thoughts and your kind emails and notes and texts and the like, my father has not passed. He is still in a skilled nursing facility in just outside of Norman, Oklahoma. My sister, my baby sister, is still at home on hospice. And just to add flavor to the whole thing, I guess we weren't having enough issues as it was. On Monday evening, my mother decided that she was going to ignore instructions. She had been told to stay inside. She decided that plants needed to be watered, and so she went outside to water the plants. And now she's in ICU because she fell. She does not have good balance. Sliced her head wide open. There was a small brain bleed, we were told. And so she's in ICU, probably going to be moved into med-surg today. But you know, it never rains, it pours, as my sister says. So, again, thank you for all the thoughts and the prayers and nice vibes and emails and likes of that. As I said the other day, I'm not planning to go back, but things may change. And given the situation right now, all of my siblings are younger than me. I'm the oldest, but my older, younger sister is handling all of this. So it may become necessary. We'll see what happens. I will keep you up to date. But being as it's Thursday, I did want to talk about some constitutional stuff. And there was an interesting news story this week out of the election. Now, I got to be honest with you, the elections mean nothing to me. These are primary elections that we had here in the state of Washington and around the country. And for the most part, we're just picking which two bozos are going to run for the job. We have a state house election here, a state Senate election here, in which we have two people that combined have spent close to $1 million for a state Senate seat in Western Washington, which just boggles my mind. And yet we're supposed to believe that either one of these two people are going to go to Olympia and represent us. He said sarcastically. But in Kansas this week, there was a vote on a constitutional referendum, I guess. It's not technically an amendment. It was kind of a way of saying, should we say that our Constitution actually says this? And of course, this lost basically 2/3 to 1/3. And yeah, I know it's not exactly that, but it's close enough. And this has caused a great deal of titillation around the country. If you have paid attention to the papers at all or the news at all, you've noticed that the left has been celebrating this because Kansas is a red state, and it should have, if everybody says what they think, it should have won easily, but it didn't. And when you're talking about Kansas, there's always there's always something with Kansas. Some years ago, there was a book, and God help me, I don't remember who wrote it, but it was a leftist who wrote it about what's wrong with Kansas. In fact, I think that was the title. What's the matter with Kansas? And it was a progressive's view of why conservative Kansas was, quote, screwed up. And if they would just adopt our progressive ideologies, Kansas could become the next California. Well, that didn't take long before someone wrote a book called What's Wrong with California. And that book basically did the same thing in reverse, only from a conservative viewpoint of California. And I remember that one because I actually read that one. That one came down to the conclusion that everything is wrong in California is the fault of no-fault divorce, which seemed absurd, but there you go. When you're talking about Kansas, by the way, the issue in question here was, should the Constitution of the state of Kansas, the state constitution, ban or allow abortion in the state of Kansas? And because it's Kansas, everybody kind of expected it to barely squeak by pass, thus banning abortion, all abortion in Kansas, but it didn't. It went down to defeat, 2/3 voting against it in this heavily Republican state. And people are going, what the heck happened? Republicans are deeply concerned. Democrats are celebrating because they think that this means that the midterms are going to be not the red wave. As we talked about back when the leak happened, they are now starting to believe that abortion, Roe v. Wade, is going to be the issue in the midterm elections. And so started looking at this, and of course it's Kansas. So when you're talking about Kansas, you got to go back in history. Kansas came into the Union as a part of the Louisiana Purchase. Now, the original land of Kansas was actually explored by Cortez. It was incorporated as part of Spanish Louisiana. And in 1803, the United States purchased Louisiana from the French, not the Spanish. Believe me, if we had time, I could go through the whole possession of Louisiana between the French and the Spanish is fascinating stuff. But by 1803, the French had it, and so we bought it from the French. And there you have it. In 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Territorial Act opened it up for settlement, and people began to pour into Kansas. Now, what ends up happening here is what is known. There's actually a painting in the Kansas Capitol, this painting. It's called Tragic Prelude. Kansas, in many ways, you don't think about it in these terms. You think about Fort Sumter, you think about Lincoln, you think about Kansas is really the powder keg that kicks off the American Civil War, because there's a debate as to whether Kansas will come into the Union as a free state or as a slave state. And so Missouri and Arkansas are shipping people there left and right to try to overwhelm the vote with pro-slavery people. Massachusetts and other free staters are sending their folks there. And a guy by the name of John Brown, who's featured in that painting at the Capitol there, he goes there and really just starts stirring up stuff. Eventually what happens is Kansas, and I don't have time to go through the whole thing, Lawrence, Kansas, is a city that is settled by free staters and anti-slavery folks. And the pro-slavery folks go in there and basically Ferguson it, riot, tear it down, burn it up. And then John Brown turns around and does it back to the pro-slavery people. And this really kicks off kind of a miniature civil war in Kansas, which eventually leads to it being called Bleeding Kansas. By the late 1850s, 1860, Kansas is it's a battleground. You think summer 2020 was bad. Kansas was out of control. In fact, it was so out of control that at one point, Senator Charles Sumner stood up in the well of the Senate to give a speech about why Kansas needed to be a free state admitted to the Union. While he was giving that speech, this actually happened in the in the Capitol building of the United States of America, a congressman from South Carolina by the name of Preston Brooks rushed into the Senate chamber and beat Charles Sumner almost to death on the floor of the Senate with his cane. Now, you might think that this would cause people to go, what the hell? Are we insane? Have we lost our minds? And in some places it did. But it's a historical fact that Preston Brooks received hundreds of canes sent to him by Southern admirers for beating up Charles Sumner, almost killing him on the Senate floor over whether or not Kansas should be admitted to the Union as a slave state or a free state. Eventually, what happened was the state of Kansas became a free state. It was admitted in January of 1861 as a free state. And at that point, things kind of calmed down a little bit. By that point, Lincoln had been elected. The Civil War was on its way. We hadn't quite had we hadn't had the firing on Sumter yet. We hadn't had all of that, Battle of Bull Run. But Kansas kind of took a back seat to all that stuff. During the Civil War, though, Kansas became another flashpoint. Quantrill's raiders in 1863 went back to Lawrence, Kansas. These were Southern partisans. Went back to Lawrence, Kansas, burned it to the ground again, and this time killed 200 people, men, women, and children, just gunned them down for being anti-slavery and pro-union. Quantrill was never really held to account for that, but it was just a part of the whole situation in Kansas. After the war, Kansas becomes a really prime settlement place for both veterans and for freedmen. So former slaves moved to Kansas, the veterans moved to Kansas, and of course, you know some of the history of that, like Dodge City with Wyatt Earp and others as well. The Chisholm Trail goes through there. But it's important to understand that Kansas, in many ways, is where the Civil War really starts to become violent. Years before a shot is ever fired at Sumter. In many ways, it's where it starts, physically starts. The political arguments are elsewhere, but it's Kansas where the actual argument comes to blows, starting in 1856. In Tuesday's referendum, as I said, the voters of Kansas, this state, which has seen so much blood and so much difficulties and so much argument. And I haven't finished this thought yet, but it's a thought I'm working on. I call it a white paper thought. Many people say to me all the time, Dave, are we headed for a civil war? Well, no, but if we were, what would be the issue? And the issue clearly to me would be abortion. It's a moral issue that doesn't have necessarily clear-cut, don't send me the email saying, yes, it does, yes, it does. It doesn't necessarily have the legal clear-cutness of other things. Much as slavery in the 1840s and 50s was in the same kind of situation. It was a moral argument as to whether or not we should allow this or not. Kansas was the flashpoint then, and now jump ahead to 2022, and Kansas becomes the first state to try to, in the post-Roe world, to try to pass a constitutional referendum saying abortion is hereby banned. We wanted it in the states, and here's the state saying, do we want it banned or not? Well, as you know, it didn't pass, and this has been celebrated by many of the papers around the country. Kansas result suggests 4 out of 5 states. It sounds like a dentist commercial, doesn't it? 4 out of 5 dentists recommend. 4 out of 5 states would back abortion rights in a similar vote. In other words, 4 out of 5, 80% of Republican states would allow for abortion rights in a similar, if a similar thing happened. And the general interpretation is that abortion is somehow or another wanted by everyone, even by Republicans. This is being celebrated on the left. It's being used as a warning. Don't mess with women. Don't mess with abortion rights. You guys aren't going to win in November. And like I said, there is some expression of this idea that somehow or another, this means that the midterms will in fact not be the slam dunk that everybody's been telling you they're going to be. I've been telling you from day one they're not going to be. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Guess we'll see. It wouldn't be the first time I was wrong, but we'll have to wait and see. The question people are asking is, what happened here? Why would Kansans vote for abortion rights? It doesn't seem to make sense. And so immediately people start in with the whole, well, it must have been cheating, must have been something this. But I think there's something else here. And I think as conservatives, as originalists, as libertarian-leaning people, we need to consider some things here, and we need to think about what actually happened. Some considerations, if you will, about the Kansas state constitution and what this bill, what this referendum really meant. Now, all of this comes out of two things: the Kansas state constitution, which was established in 1861, and a Kansas state court, Supreme Court decision from 2019 called Hodes and Nausser versus Schmidt. The upshot of this was that the state of Kansas, before Roe was overturned, passed a law banning a specific type of abortion. And these two doctors, Hodes and Nausser, challenged that law. And the law was struck down by the Kansas State Supreme Court. After Roe, the Kansas State Legislature put on the ballot this idea that, well, follow me here. I'll try to explain it. The Kansas State Constitution is kind of unique in some ways. It starts with a preamble like all the others, but the first section of the Kansas State Constitution is in fact the Kansas State Bill of Rights. They don't wait till the end and tack that on there. It starts with that. And Section 1, Number 1 says very simply, all men are possessed of equal and inalienable natural rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When the Kansas State Supreme Court was considering this case, Hodes and Nausser versus Schmidt, which was this ban on abortions in the state of Kansas, they went through a bunch of considerations. Kansas courts have the authority to interpret Kansas constitutional provisions, independently of the manner in which the federal courts interpret similar or corresponding provisions of the United States Constitution. That's important. This can result in the Kansas Constitution protecting the rights of Kansans more robustly than would the United States Constitution. Kansas courts look to the words of the Kansas Constitution to interpret its meaning. When the words do not make the drafters and the people's intent clear, courts look to the historical record, remembering the pole star is the intention of the makers and the adopters of the relevant provisions. Section 1, we just read that, of the Kansas Bill of Rights, sets forth rights that are broader and distinct from the rights in the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. The rights acknowledged in Section 1 of the Kansas Constitutional Bill of Rights are judicially enforceable against government action that does not meet constitutional standards. Does anything that I've read to you so far make you uncomfortable? Does it make you mad? Frankly, it makes me want to move to Kansas. Section 1 of the Kansas Constitutional Bill of Rights affords the protection of the right of personal autonomy. Now, this is from the actual ruling, Hodes and Nausser v. Schmidt. It affords the protection of the right of personal autonomy, which includes the ability to control one's own body, to assert bodily integrity, and to exercise self-determination. This right in the Kansas Constitution allows a woman to make her own decisions regarding her body, health, family formation, family life, decisions that can include whether to continue a pregnancy. The state may only infringe upon the right to decide whether to continue a pregnancy if the state has a compelling interest and has narrowly tailored its actions to that interest. Let me just repeat that. It demonstrates the supremacy placed on the rights of individuals. Preservations of these natural rights is given precedent over the establishments of government. I don't know how much more important I can say that, how much more critically we can go through these things. But as I'm reading this ruling, which in essence said that the state of Kansas protects the right to autonomy, bodily autonomy, as an inalienable natural right, this preserves these natural rights, and they are given precedent over the establishment of government. Your rights under Kansas Bill of Rights, all men are possessed of equal and inalienable natural rights, amongst which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, overrule other government decisions unless the government can show that it has a compelling interest and narrowly tailored restrictions on it. You with me here so far? Okay. These are all concepts that we've heard before talking about the federal Constitution, particularly with the 14th Amendment, strict scrutiny and the like. But in Kansas, because of the way they've written their Constitution, it's even more broad. They specifically said it's more broad than the 14th Amendment allows under the federal Constitution. Do you follow me here? We will go to the nth degree to protect personal life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which includes autonomy. It includes privacy, which way back when is what Roe was really all about in the big scheme of things. And the question you end up asking yourself is very simply this. As conservatives, as originalists, as libertarian-leaning people, when I use the term libertarian, by the way, I'm not talking about the party. As that kind of person, isn't all of that what we say we believe? We want government out of every decision in our lives. We want the privacy to make our own decisions with our physicians, with our bankers, with our spouse, with whomever. Isn't that what we say we want? Isn't that exactly what we say we want from government? Stay out of things. And here in Kansas, you have a government that is severely limited and a court that has said, unless you have a compelling interest and a very, very strict scrutiny, narrowly tailored actions, you stay out of it. It's not your business. Isn't that exactly what we want as libertarian-leaning conservative originalists? Isn't that even, if you want to go further, the precise purpose of the 10th Amendment? Those rights not specifically listed here are reserved to the states. Isn't that exactly what we're saying? A few weeks ago, wasn't that exactly what we were celebrating when Roe was overturned? Oh, it's returned to the states. Yay! And now here's a state that says we go beyond what the federal Constitution does. We are so jealous of our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which includes personal autonomy, that we say you have more than that here. And unless our government and the state has a compelling interest, a reason, a valid reason, and a narrowly tailored solution, we're going to side with you. And that includes if you want to have an abortion, the state had damn well better have a very good reason and a very, very narrowly tailored solution for what they're going to do. Now, the state of Kansas saw this decision from 2019 as somewhat interfering with the Roe v. Wade overturn and decided to put on their ballot a motion to say, the people of Kansas to say, our Constitution, what that means is that when you go back to, nothing in our Constitution shall be construed to mean that there is a right to an abortion. And this went down in defeat, 60-40 along the way. Amongst all the weeping and gnashing of teeth and celebration, I would remind you that If we really believe that government should be limited, we should have voted against it too, if we could have voted if you were in Kansas. I would have. Do we really want government deciding these things, or do we want it as a personal autonomy? Even as a conservative, do I want government hammering you for what I think morally should happen, or do I want you to decide? I might disagree with your decision, but is it really my place to decide it for you? Which is, of course, what I've said about it all along. I don't believe in abortion. I think abortion's a bad idea, but I'm not going to get one. Neither was my wife. We had that conversation very early on. We're not going to do it. We've decided ourselves. I don't need the government telling me that I don't need it. I still believe, we talked about this last year, I still believe that the strongest argument against the vaccine mandate was Roe. Medical privacy between myself and my doctor. If my doctor doesn't think it's a good idea, who the hell is the government to come in here and tell me it is? Who is Jay Inslee to tell me that it is? If I lived in Kansas, I'd be using that argument, wouldn't you? Now this whole thing is in the hands of the states. Liberty, my friends, comes with responsibilities, not privileges. It requires us to preserve it in order to get its blessings. Otherwise, well, you end up with the curse of government, which isn't very nice, isn't it? It's just government controlling every aspect of your life. And I don't want that. Pretty sure most conservatives don't want that. They keep telling me they don't want that. They keep telling me we're the party of less government and lower taxes. So why are we upset about Kansas saying, that's not what our Constitution says? We're going to say you have bodily autonomy, and if you want to do that, then that's between you and your doctor, and it's none of my business. And somehow or another, we're supposed to be upset about that, and Democrats are supposed to be celebrating that. It's because neither side is thinking, are they? Neither side has put their thinking caps on and gone, that's a pretty amazing idea, isn't it? Keeping the government out of my private business.